Hi, I'm Peter Criff, Executive Director of the Statewide Independent Living Council.
Hi, and my name is Sarah Launderville. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Center for Independent Living.
And our two organizations together are responsible for writing the Statewide Independent Living Plan, which is a 3-year plan that guides programs and services for people with disabilities throughout Vermont.
We invite you to come out to one of our community forums to provide your input, or join us on our Facebook page, or call us at our 1-800 number.
And today, we're going to share some issues with you, and we'd like your input.
Trauma-informed services. What is that?
So there's a couple ways that we want to look around trauma, and trauma-informed services is really having programs and services available in our community where people really understand that some of us have gone through trauma, and when you're seeking out a service, you don't want to kind of bring that trauma back up, and so some people are working on that. But what we really want to get to in the plan is really looking at how are people accessing programs and shelters around domestic violence and other violence issues, go beyond that around the statistics around people with developmental disabilities, of how you walk into a mall and within 5 minutes somebody's making fun of you or discriminating against you. So really making sure that how are people being treated in our communities, and how are we responding to that through this plan is what we're getting to with this.
So is this part of education for first responders as well as community partners?
That was more of around emergency management is what we do with first responders, but it can be a little bit about that. It can be about if someone is having a first break psychosis, and how are we, when we're going out into the community as police officers and other community supports, how are we responding to people in those situations, and not triggering more events to happen, as opposed to kind of de-escalating and working with folks.
And again, practically how that translates into the plan is that maybe we could actually figure out a way to get more funding for training for the first responders.
So legal systems and protections, I imagine, is a gigantic issue. You've talked about access, you've talked about discrimination, and who do you want to hear from in this category of plan?
Well, I think we want to hear from everybody, but I think we want to hear from people to tell us about their understandings of what their legal rights are. Because I'm not sure that all of us, including myself, know the full extent of all of our rights under the law. So we'd like to know about that. Another thing is, I wonder if people are aware that the ADA is a complaint-driven law. Is that it's great that it's there, but it's not like, you know, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. You know, the ADA is there, but to actually do something under the law, you actually have to file a complaint. So I'd be very interested to know if people knew that.
One of the things that we struggle with sometimes at VCIL year to year when we're developing is, where do we spend our resources on? What type of training do we spend our resources on? Because they're limited. So do we train folks on the Air Carrier Access Act, where people have access to the airports and to airlines, or do we train people in fair housing? And we tend to really focus our attention on fair housing, the Americans with Disabilities Act, employment, and those sort of trainings. But what else is out there that people want to access, including business owners and employers, so that we can really get the state to be a little more fair and accessible to folks with disabilities.
So again, it sounds like this plan helps you set priorities.
It really does.
Which then directs funding and investment.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So voting and citizenship, this is a big time. We're in early November, and
Yes.
and I wonder what some of the barriers are that people face in voting and citizenship.
Yeah, some of the things that we hear about are there's a lot of federal laws around federal elections, but on town meeting day we don't have as many of the federal responsibilities that we have on federal election day. So making town meetings accessible to folks, making sure there's an American Sign Language interpreter if it's requested, making sure the meeting space is physically accessible. I went to my town, and they had to move the location, and although it was accessible to get into the building, what they did was you signed in and you went up on a ramped stage, but the checkout process was down a flight of stairs. And so just that thoughtfulness when you're planning out a space is not something that comes automatically to people, just as a wheelchair doesn't automatically show up on your door after you've been in an accident. So we want to make sure that we're spending our time and resources well on training and getting the word out about how do we make sure that folks with disabilities have access to their polling places, and what experiences are they having in their polling places.
And also, if you're a regular voter, do you notice a huge difference between the federal elections and the town meeting elections?